All right, let's dive in. Most of us think we know the story of Jesus and the woman at the well, right? But what if the version we've all heard, the one about a shameful sinner, is completely wrong? Today, we're going to uncover a totally different, ancient perspective that changes this entire encounter from a quiet rebuke into something epic, a public prophetic wedding proposal.
So what you're looking at here are two totally different ways of seeing this woman. On the left, you've got the common view we all know, the sinful outcast. But on the right, you have this ancient Near Eastern view, a tragic widow being cared for by her relatives. So how on earth can one story lead to two completely opposite conclusions? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
First up, let's just quickly revisit the story we all think we know. You know, the one we've probably heard in sermons our whole lives. Let's take a look at why that version became so popular. So here's the story you've probably heard a million times. She's had 5 husbands, so the assumption is she's been divorced 5 times. She's living with a man who isn't her husband, so she's shacked up. And the real kicker, she's at the well at high noon, the hottest part of the day, because she's trying to avoid all the other women. It paints a pretty clear picture, right? A picture of shame and isolation.
But here's the thing. When you start to really dig into the text and the culture, that traditional story starts to get a little shaky. There are some key details that just don't quite line up.
Okay, this is huge. One of the most telling clues is actually something that's missing. Think about it. When Jesus meets the woman caught in adultery, what does he say? Go and sin no more. He tells the tax collector Zacchaeus to pay people back. He challenges the rich young ruler. But with this woman, nothing. He never once tells her to repent. That's a massive clue that we might be missing the point.
And this really gets at a core idea from that time. A hard life doesn't automatically mean you've sinned. I mean, look at Job. He lost everything. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers. Jesus himself pointed to a man born blind and said it wasn't because of sin. Sometimes tragedy is just tragedy, not a punishment.
Which brings us back to this whole noon thing. The author, John, makes a point to mention it, and we've always been taught that it's a sign of her shame. But what if we've been reading that clue completely backward? What if her being there at that specific, unusual hour wasn't a mark of shame, but a sign of a divine appointment?
And this is where we get to this incredible new way of seeing the story, a framework that reframes the entire thing as a powerful ancient allegory, the wedding at the well.
You know, for an ancient reader, a well wasn't just a place to get water. When a significant man and woman meet at a well in the Bible, it meant one thing: a wedding was about to go down. It was kind of like the original dating app. Seriously, Isaac's bride, Rebecca, found at a well. Jacob meets Rachel, the lover of his life, at a well. Moses meets his wife Zipporah at a well. This location is no accident. It's a giant flashing sign pointing to marriage.
Now, to understand what's really happening here, you have to know about this crucial role called the kinsman redeemer. This was a male relative who had a legal and moral duty to rescue a family member in trouble. And very often, that meant marrying a widow who had no children, all to keep the family line going. Keep that role in mind, because that's exactly the role Jesus is about to play. And check out the language that text uses. Jesus had to pass through Samaria. Now, geographically, that's not strictly true. Most Jews at the time would go the long way around Samaria to avoid it. So this wasn't a geographical had to, it was a missional had to. He was on a deliberate quest to meet a very specific bride at a very specific well to fulfill a very specific purpose.
So, if this whole thing is a symbolic wedding, and Jesus is the groom, who's the bride? And what in the world is the real story behind her so-called 5 husbands? This, my friends, is the symbolic heart of the entire story.
All through the Old Testament, there's this powerful metaphor. The relationship between God and his people, Israel, is a marriage. And when the people started worshiping other gods, it was described as adultery. It gets so intense here in the book of Hosea that God actually talks about divorcing Israel for being unfaithful.
But the story doesn't end with divorce. The very same prophets who talked about divorce also promised a future restoration. God says he will woo his bride back, meet her in the wilderness, or say at a well, and renew their wedding vows. He would be her true husband again, and she would forget the names of her other lovers, her Baals, which was a common word for false gods.
And this
this is the moment where it all just clicks into place. It's absolutely mind-blowing. On the left, Jesus tells the woman, "You have had 5 husbands." On the right, the book of 2 Kings tells us that centuries earlier, the Assyrian Empire conquered this exact region, Samaria, and moved in 5 foreign people groups, who brought with them their 5 foreign gods. Do you see it? The woman's 5 husbands aren't men. They're the 5 false gods her nation has been married to. Jesus isn't exposing her personal life. He's revealing the spiritual adultery of the entire nation, and she is their representative.
So once you see that, everything changes. The woman is completely transformed. She isn't some shameful outcast. She's a stand-in for her entire people, and she's about to become their very first missionary.
I mean, think about her reaction when Jesus reveals her 5 husbands. Is she ashamed? Does she run and hide? No. Her first words are, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet." That's not shame. That is stunning theological insight. She immediately gets that he has supernatural knowledge.
And it doesn't stop there. She then brings up the Messiah. She says, "I know that the Messiah is coming. He will tell us all things." This woman isn't just some random person. She is a knowledgeable, faithful worshiper who has been actively waiting for this exact moment. And here's the proof. Now ask yourself, does a town pariah, someone everyone shuns, run back to town and have the whole community immediately believe her? No way. But a respected, if tragic, member of the community, her word would carry enormous weight. And it did. Because of her testimony, her entire town comes to faith.
And get this isn't some new trendy reinterpretation. The Eastern Orthodox tradition has honored this woman for centuries. They gave her a name, Fotine, which means the enlightened one. They call her equal to the apostles, and their church history says she went on to be a powerful evangelist who preached across the Roman Empire, converted the Emperor Nero's own daughter, and was eventually martyred for her faith. That is the legacy of a saint, not a sinner.
So just by shifting our lens from a modern, literal one to an ancient, symbolic one, the whole picture changes. The woman at the well is transformed from a simple morality tale into an epic story of God redeeming his people. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other stories that we think we know so well might be hiding a much deeper, more incredible meaning, just waiting for us to take a second look?